Most companies are born global from day one. They figure out a strategy, a product, a culture, an organization that can go across markets very, very quickly.
Antes de avançar para o episódio, só vou falar rapidamente dos dois apoiadores que fazem o Sunday Drop ser possível, a OnFly e a Salve. Primeiro, a OnFly. Eu escrevi um artigo recentemente que mostra como a OnFly está revolucionando o mercado de viagens corporativas ao melhorar a experiência dos viajantes, ao melhorar o controle das empresas e reduzindo os gastos. Eu vou deixar o link nos comentários, mas se a sua empresa quiser economizar mais em viagens corporativas e tornar a vida de quem está viajando melhor, considere usar OnFly, escaneie o QR Code na tela ou acesse o link nos comentários para saber mais. O segundo apoiador do Sunday Drops é a Salve. A Salve está revolucionando a telefonia corporativa através de uma solução flexível, econômica e modular. Ela é a solução ideal para startups. Eu vou te dar duas razões. A primeira é flexibilidade. Você, fundador, pode assinar ou cancelar uma linha em questão de segundos. Você não precisa passar por todo o processo burocrático que a gente sabe que existe nesse mercado. Com a Salve é tudo rápido e veloz. O segundo aspecto é a economia. A solução da Salve é modular, ou seja, você pode assinar só o que você precisa. E isso é muito único nesse mercado. Saiba mais em salve.com.br/startups ou escaneie o QR Code na tela. Sem mais delongas, vamos ao episódio. So, have to be here in San Francisco with Alex Lazarow.
I'd like to be from Salvador in the Portuguese edition.
Okay. So it's such a pleasure to be here with you, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, let's start. So give us a little TLDR of your history.
TLDR. Yeah. How short do you want it? Like one line?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay.
We're not American. We're Brazilian, so we can go longer.
You know, I'm Canadian. But so my story. I'm Canadian originally. I'm from a small city called Winnipeg in the middle of Canada. My mom's Belgian. Grew up in Africa. My dad's American. Big Eastern European family. My godmother's from China. My aunt is from, if you'll forgive her, Argentina. But I perhaps had no choice but to run a global VC fund. I've been doing venture for about 13 years. I spent 5 years with Omidyar Network, the family office of Pierre and Pam Omidyar, and then 5 years at a French multi-stage fund, Out-Innovate. And a couple of years ago, I launched Fluent Ventures. We're an early stage global venture capital firm. I'll tell you a little bit about our strategy as well. Outside of work, I wrote a book called Out-Innovate, how global entrepreneurs from Delhi to Detroit are rewriting the rules of Silicon Valley, which came out Harvard Business Review Press a couple years ago. It's in Chinese, Korean, Spanish, and we just announced at South Summit that it's coming out in Portuguese. It's
amazing.
So we'll have so yet another reason for a Portuguese translation.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time in Brazil over the years. I've been an early investor in companies like Banco Neon, Guia Bolso, Camino, Facili, and in broader LATAM, Clara, Zeppelin, Quesky, things like that. So spent a lot of time in the region and excited to have the conversation.
Cool, amazing. Nice, man. So you have been in Brazil several times before and has invested in the region. Why do you think Brazil is a great place? Or Latin America as a whole?
So I will not say that I think it's a great place. I think it is a great place.
Cool.
When I started investing in venture, only 4 cities had ever created a unicorn. Today, that number's over 150. And while there's a massive amount of innovation distribution around the world, the reality is that 80% of unicorns are still made in 20% of global cities around the world. And I think one of those places has actually been Sao Paulo and the broader kind of Brazil ecosystem. And so I think, and actually I know Brazil is a great place to build companies because the proof is in the pudding, because we've seen some of the greatest companies not just in LATAM, but in the world. And we've invested a bunch already out of the current fund and continue to do so. And I think hopefully a couple of them will turn out to be similar.
You live in the Bay Area.
I live here.
And you also invest all around the world. Where is the main difference between here and other places?
Oh man, how long do you have?
A lot. So
one of the reasons I wrote my book, Out-Innovate, was to really dive into this question. I was really frustrated that everything we knew about Silicon Valley best practice was centered in a time and a place, Silicon Valley and today, and for a very particular type of asset-light, software-based company that wants to grow extraordinarily fast. And what I was observing was that the best entrepreneurs around the world were actually building companies differently. They were building them ecosystems with less capital, not necessarily the same depth of been there, done that, startup, venture, human capital, et cetera. And so a couple of the differences that I noted in the book that I really stand by is one, instead of blitzscaling, I think the best entrepreneurs build camels. They build default strong unit economics. They manage burn. They take a long-term outlook. I think depending on the market, and Brazil is a little bit of an exception given how big the domestic market is, but if you look around LATAM, most companies are born global from day one. They figure out a strategy, a product, a culture, an organization that can go across markets very, very quickly. And I think that's a distinction I see a lot. So I think there's a bunch of these kind of approaches to company building that just look radically different. And success to build in Brazil just often takes a different playbook.
Amazing. Tell us about the history of camelos, because this is one term that in the world of startup has gained a lot of traction through the years. It was like a concept that you were thinking for a while, or it was kind of a eureka moment?
I think actually the answer is both of those things. Okay. So when I was writing the first draft of the book, the word camel did not feature in it. But what did is it's like deep conviction around resilience, long-term outlook, manage burn, strong unit economics. Like, I just don't believe that the blitzscaling model works in emerging markets, perhaps with a very small exception of a narrow set of truly winner-take-all markets. But for most companies in emerging markets, I actually think that it's about building a great business from the ground up and earning the right to raise more money over time. When I was coming out with the book, I think over drinks, joking with my wife, we were like, man, you know, there's unicorns, a bunch of these other animals, like this concept of startups that want to still grow pretty big, but have the optionality of raising money, and that are built on a foundation. Like, there isn't a conversation about that. And so we talked about, I added the word camel into it. And it's really funny because it's definitely been the most viral part of the book. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs around the world recognized their approach in that.
Yeah. I think that part of the beauty of the concept of camels is because I think it can be applied to a more broader type of startups. Yeah. It's like not the way of hyper exponential growth and kind of things. But how would you define a camel?
I think a camel has three core characteristics. One is they start with unit economics that work from the get-go. So it's not about blitzscaling and growth and using that story to raise. It's actually about figuring out the core nut of the unit economics business. The second is managing burn. It's about building an organization that can, with a small amount of people, get to early product market fit and scaling fit. And then third is a long-term outlook in how you build. And the result of that is, you know, most startups have a J curve, right? Like, you burn a lot of money, you go. I actually observe most camels have some squiggly S curve there, where they might burn a little bit at the beginning, they might not be profitable on day one, but they get to control their dynamics. And if they choose to raise, they can raise, and they do it again and again. But they raise for specific purposes, for a specific amount of time, and they control the destiny. And so I think that's kind of where I observe the camel phenomenon the most.
Interesting. And what type of companies are you interested to invest right now?
So the model at Fluent, the fund I founded, our strategy is geographic alpha. We think that the best opportunities are global, but the winners will be local. If you look at the number one tech company in any market around the world, China, India, Africa, Korea, Latin America, whatever, the number one tech company is the same. It's the Amazon for X, it's Mercado Libre, it's Sea in Southeast Asia, it's Flipkart in India. By the way, most of the next 2 to 10 are kind of the same. They're like a digital bank. They are a buy now, pay later. They're a Uber for X if Uber didn't win the market, or whatever it is. And so that's our strategy. We try to pick what we think in an opinionated way are some of these business models that are going to globalize, where we might be able to invest in the local champion, and then try to make a couple bets, connect founders across geos. We have a network of about 50 unicorn founders and operators and tech luminaries as part of our LP base, and really help to amplify them. And I invest, just maybe to answer your question directly, we invest in 3 sectors, primarily financial services, digital health, and commerce enablement.
Financial service, digital health, and commercial enablement, like 3 categories that probably it will have a local winner.
Yeah, and the reason it'll have a local winner tends to be because there's a couple of dynamics at play. The first is there's local network effects. Okay. This isn't Airbnb or Facebook where there's more value for me in San Francisco if my friends in Sao Paulo are on it. It doesn't matter. Nubank, there's no value of a San Francisco user versus zero. So local network effects, regulation, financial services and health obviously have that, and operational complexity. I think those are the ones where local entrepreneurs that really understand the local market dynamics, the regulation, whatever it is, the customization of the product, that's where they're going to win. And so that's why we invest in those sectors.
Yeah. And which stage are you investing?
Stage has become a little bit of an alphabet soup these days, it feels.
The way we have like $1 billion seed round.
Yeah, exactly. The way we define it is post-product market fit, early scaling fit. So, there's a product, there are customers that pay for it. We can kind of measure a little bit on pricing and people using it, and we have a sense of what channels we might be able to pour money in. For us, that tends to be kind of a seed round, seed extension, as late as an early A. I usually tell founders maybe it's 100K of revenue to $1.5 million of revenue, like kind of on the late stage. That's kind of where our bullseye is. But also, rules are made to be broken, and we've broken them.
Yeah. There is an interesting observation that I've been thinking a lot lately, and is that, for example, when we think about the startup ecosystem, maybe 10 years ago, some company is thriving in the US, and probably a competitor, a copycat, appears in Brazil 1 year later, 2 years later. And right now, it seems to me that the time has reduced a lot.
Oh, yeah.
For like 2 months later, someone is going to try to do America for Latin America or doing something for Latin America. How do you think about that? And is there an observation that you think is solid? And how do you think as an investor this type of?
I'll make a couple observations there.
Okay.
One is I think the high level point I agree with. And there's a couple reasons. One, it's much easier to launch a company than ever before with AI, with software service, whatever it is. Two is I think the information is much more porous around what's happening across geographies. And I think three, the culture of entrepreneurship, local VCs, blah, blah. I think all that's true. But I actually think the mechanism is not, it comes from Silicon Valley and then, whatever, gets copied by Rocket Internet. Like that isn't what's happening anymore. I think that it's actually, there's hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs around the world iterating and trying, and they see, oh, that thing might work, let me try it here. And then maybe it works here. And then the original might actually see that and try it. So I actually think it's much more iterative. My favorite example, we were talking about Uber a second ago. My favorite example actually, which is like 10 years old, is kind of in that vein. And then I think we're seeing this on turbocharge mode. Uber was, ridesharing was started in Silicon Valley, not by Uber. By the way, Uber replicated it. That model replicated around the world. In Indonesia, Go-Jek was founded. It was adapted to the Indonesian context on using ojeks, these little motorcycle taxis. But it also combined some elements of other business models. It combined Nadeem, the founder. When I interviewed him for the book, he talked a lot about how in the morning you want to drive people to work, and in the evening you drive them home. But during the day, his drivers would be cash in, cash out agents. Sounds a little bit like M-Pesa in Kenya. And he wanted to deliver doctors and food and essential services. Sounds a little bit like super apps in China. And he bundled all that, and that's kind of what it looks like. And by the way, Uber has replicated some of that with food delivery and things like that. So I think that's how innovation is happening. And with AI and the speed of development, we're actually seeing that in turbo mode. And that'll continue.
Yeah, like the speed of adoption has been crazy. Because everyone is using, like everyone knows that you have to use software. Like, so it's been crazy. And you talked a bit about AI. I would love to have your point of view of this technology and how it's evolving from someone that is living and investing from Bay Area, which if you talk in a coffee with, if you listen to any conversation in the city, maybe 50% is about AI.
Yeah. Well, we're recording this in April 2025. I would tell you my opinion today is different than my opinion was in March 2025 and February 25. So I'll tell you what my opinion is today, and I'll just reserve the right to evolve my thinking as the facts change.
Yeah.
But
I love that statement.
Yeah.
I think I will use that. Hey, this is my current point of view. Yeah, because it can change so fast.
And by the way, it's already changed a lot. My point of view has changed a couple times already. I'll tell you, in our portfolio of 13 companies today, only one would put AI in their tagline. Only one. And yet 100% of them, I would say, are AI companies in a way, in the sense that they're driving personalization of the user experience. They're using it for workflows. They're coding with it. I think it's changing everything about how you build a company and where. One of the things I'm not investing in, I'm not doing the like AI chatbot agent for X. It's just, not that it's a bad business or good business, it just doesn't fit our model of geographic arbitrage. So I'm not investing in like that bucket of things today. I'm also, I don't like doing super high valuations, and a lot of that doesn't fit our fund model. But I will make the comment, just because we talked about camels, I think that what AI is going to allow is a different type of camel, where Camels used to bootstrap to get to product, and then they bootstrap to get to revenue, and then they bootstrap to get to profitability. I actually think with AI, you can get to first dollar revenue much, much more cheaply. You can literally code for a day and have a reasonable product that you could try out and see if people want to buy it. And by the way, do that a ton of times. And so I think we're going to see a whole different set of companies that are able to get to a product much quicker. And I wrote about this concept of seed strapping, which is becoming popular in the Valley, where maybe you're not doing 20 rounds of venture capital or 5 rounds of seed, Series A, whatever. You might be doing 1 round. And so you're a camel, you bootstrap to that, then you raise 1 round, and that lets you get to revenue. And you might not need to raise quite as much as you thought you did for certain applications. I think we're going to see more of that, a different way of building companies because of AI.
You are good at labeling things, labeling like current things that are happening in the world. So tell us more about the seed strapping. What is that?
Seed strapping, I did not invent seed strapping, although I did add the camel label to it, so just to make it. But I think the concept of seed strapping is really this notion that you can bootstrap with a seed round. Okay. You don't need to necessarily have multiple venture rounds continue scaling because you can get to profitability much earlier and control your own destiny. You might need radically less capital to still be a company that's trying to chase massive outcomes very quickly. That's the hypothesis of that. And I think there's a certain subset of businesses for which that will work very well.
Do you think that this is going to change the venture capital world in some ways or not?
I think it will change some segments of it. Like I think there's going to be an opportunity for firms that focus on a particular vertical type approach where you can seed strap. I also suspect that another possible state that AI it creates is if it is so cheap for me to create a feature for a potential customer, it will be so cheap for you to create the same feature. And so the advantage of product, it will erode much more quickly. And so what does that mean? Well, it probably means that you'll have to have a little bit more momentum on go-to-market, a little bit more unique reasons to sell to customers, and you're actually expanding your product footprint much more. When I started at McKinsey many, many moons ago, I remember thinking about feeling envious of all the people pre-PowerPoint that only had to do 5 or 6 slide decks or 10 slide decks with like a compass and whatever. PowerPoint, which should have made it easier to make slides, actually just meant that we did 10 times more slides. I suspect AI is going to do that too, where it makes it a lot easier to code, and as a result, the expectations from a customer are going to be that much bigger.
Yeah, that's a great force, and it's impressive that maybe in the end, distribution will become even more important.
Distribution and data. I think that there's going to be a lot of value on being able to train your own versions of an AI to the specific workflows of an industry or whatever product you do. I think there's going to be value to that. That'll be real, and that'll accrue to people that have distribution because they will have data.
Yeah, it will be like also a data network effect that will give you advantage. I think about when I will sign on with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will give my data to some SaaS that I use, and maybe the product of the SaaS will become so much more adaptable to what I am.
Or will the SaaS exist at all?
Yeah.
Will AI just do some of these activities?
Yeah.
It's not clear to me that SaaS in the current form of we conform our workflow to a single page of software and then take actions based on it. It's going to be how we will interact that in the future with technology. I actually wonder if SaaS will have to AIify itself. It's actually a much more natural way. Instead of saying, hey, like, help me figure out whatever it is my expenses, it's say, hey, like, take care of X thing, like, do this job. That's actually a much more natural way, I think, of interacting with companies. So I actually think we might see quite a lot of flux on how where SaaS companies will need to adopt AI pretty importantly in different parts of their workflows, or else others might.
Yeah, it's like you are talking about a bit of the agentic world.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have some takes on that?
Look,
it seems like to be the main theme, and I know that we are talking about the future, so it can change a lot during the time.
And by the way, I think we're in the 0.5 inning of this. So I think it's very early. I will say, I think one analogy for me is the mobile phone. We need a mode to interact with the computer and the internet, and what we've devised is like a screen, and you push buttons, and you type, etc. But that's only because it's a limitation of the technology that we have. If we had infinite technology, we might actually interact with the web in a different way that actually would be better. And it feels more natural to me, and I suspect for others, to like perhaps interact in a voice way, in a dialogue. It doesn't necessarily need to be constrained in the format of a SaaS dashboard or a set of software tools. And I think agents today is one manifestation of it. That's the manifestation of an AI model into a chatbot. I don't think necessarily that's the way it's going to play out. I think we're going to see a proliferation of ways to interact with an underlying technology that's able to help us with a variety of tasks.
Yeah, but definitely will change everything in the way that how we use the software to complete tasks.
100%.
Yeah.
And I believe that AI will be able to complete a certain set of those tasks, maybe with human in the loop, maybe not, but like I think that's coming for sure.
Yeah, and there's one question that I love to ask to my interviewers that I think you have kids, right?
Kids, I have two, yeah.
Yeah. How do you think about the play of education? Do you have any thoughts on that? I love to ask this question because I think that it's something that has changed so much. It's so important.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's changed so much. I think it needs to change so much. Okay. And I don't know the answer, and I'm thinking a lot about it. The way we teach kids today doesn't look radically different than the way I was taught when I was a kid, and perhaps how my parents were taught when they were kids.
It seems super similar, right?
I think it's very, very similar. And we now have the opportunity to radically customize the education. Like, part of the reason the model hasn't changed is that we didn't have a scalable way to have a teacher and kids in the room. We might have some ways to have some very interesting, customizable ways to teach kids in the classroom and to help really kind of accelerate some of the things that folks are naturally good at, and also where kids might be deficient to really, in a customizable way, help them have a remediation. So I don't know what it looks like. It's not clear to me that the 4-year college degree is what it's going to look like when my kids are older. But it also feels like, my kids are in kindergarten. It also feels like at this age, it's not about learning how to do puzzles or chess better. They just need to be loved and be in a safe place, et cetera. And so I think the job of a teacher that is also like someone that cares about the kids and is kind of all like, that is important. And that's really, that's really going to continue being critical.
Amazing. And you are a man from the world, right? As you were like talking in the beginning of the podcast, your family is from all around the world. So what that has teach you about life?
Yeah, when I describe what I look for in the kind of people we hire, is in some ways, with a bias on my own experience perhaps, is I look for people that are culturally amphibious, that can work across different cultures and that understand. But in some ways, I think that the thing that has shaped my lens with that is, look, I've been to Brazil 15, 20 times. I can tell you one thing with absolute certainty: I will never be better than you at investing in Brazil or understanding the Brazilian culture. No chance, right? But hopefully, with this lens of looking around the world, I can merge a bunch of different experiences to have a unique lens on what might work or might look different one day in the Brazilian context. And I actually think that one of the things that I treasure and I try to hope to foster in my children is a humility of understanding that, we live in Marin and in the Bay Area. Like, we have a way of like what life looks like here. That is one way, and it is not better or worse. It is different, and there's so much to learn and respect and admire in how other cultures do it in different places. And by the way, learn from and maybe bring back. That's something I look for in our teammates, and something I hope to cultivate with our kids. Is this kind of humility, curiosity, sense of adventure? Yeah, that's how I think about it.
Super nice answer, man. And the last question that I do to everyone in my podcast: what is the kindest thing that anyone has done for you?
What is the kindest thing anyone has ever? Oh man, I've been very lucky to have gotten the chance to have a lot of mentors and folks that have helped me out around the time. And I can give you an incredibly long list of things my family has done for me. But since we're talking about kind of a business podcast, I'll just talk about one mentor. When I was in undergrad, I grew up in Winnipeg, a small city, and I had this awesome job in Winnipeg to go work at the biggest kind of wealth management group in the city. It was kind of a reasonably well sought after job. It was a rotational program. And my boss there, I was doing the summer internship, highly encouraged me to not take the full-time offer. And really kind of gave me a lot of advice of saying, hey, look, like the thing you need to do is go and get a bunch of experience outside of the city, wherever that is. And really, like, even if you come back, like, it'll really shape your perspective. But I think he was one of the people that helped me, didn't change the course, but like helped kick me out of the nest a little bit and forced me to do the thing. And I ended up doing investment banking in the big city of Toronto, but like really, and then ended up doing my MBA and whatever. But I think he was one of the people that really contributed at kind of pushing me to think globally. And I think that's one of the things that mentors can really do is like figure out what the folks they're working with actually want to do, what they might be good at, what they're curious about, and really kind of help give them the nudge that kind of pushes them down the hill or perhaps starts them up the hill, whatever the right analogy is. But
amazing. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah,
Bye.
Thank you. And if you are like in the YouTube, I don't know in Portuguese or in English, subscribe to Sunday Drops podcast and follow Alex and Fluent Ventures.
Thank you so much for having me. And you can find my newsletter, 99% Tech, where I will repost this podcast.
Amazing.
And we'll do it. All right.
Okay, thank you,
sir. All right.